What a great way to start out a season. The beginning and the end of the episode were great. Everything in the middle was excellent. Man, I am hyped for this season of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 1, Two Swords. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, and I'm here to bring you the first of many reviews of Game of Thrones. We last night premiered Season 4, Episode 1. A lot of hype behind it, and it's definitely, I think the hype is much deserved. Very, very good series thus far, and I know that leaving off from Season 3, I felt like, man, they could have used about another 5 or 6 episodes in here, so definitely left us hanging. This episode was entitled Two Swords, and there was a ton of things that happened in this episode. One of the things that I didn't care for much in Season 3 is that it seemed like there was so many different plot lines going and so many different characters to follow that oftentimes you didn't see your favorite character or your character's family, whatever that you were following, for a couple episodes. It seemed like in episodes 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 there was set characters, and in 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 there was other sets of characters. Very rarely did the two sets ever intermingle or be in the same episode. Not even so much sharing the screen, but just being in the same episode. And I don't know how this season's going to go with that. I understand that that Season 3 was the first half of the third book in the series by George R.R. Martin, and I understand that this would be the second half of said book. And I'm not sure because I haven't read the book, so this is only going by hearsay. But all in all, though, it was a great episode. I believe that its strongest points were when it started, the opening scene or two, and the final couple scenes. Everything in between, I wouldn't say was filler, but it was kind of just catching us up on, hey, while you were gone, this is what these characters were doing. So it starts out and they give us a brief couple-minute recap to remind us of everything that happened, the Red Wedding, all the slaughtering and sex and everything else that's going on, and kind of where we are in the story now. And I thought it was weird, right before it gets out of this flashback, it shows, Ned Stark getting his head cut off, which was back from Sean Bean, back from Season 1. And I thought, that's an odd thing. Why would they put that in there? Because that happened 2-3 seasons ago now. Anyway, you find out immediately why it happens and why this is entitled Two Swords. Tywin Lannister, after, obviously his backhanded backstabbing move, whatever you want to call it, taking out all the Starks at, certainly, at the Red Wedding, he feels like he's gained a victory. The war is not completely over, but he certainly at least for now thwarted his main adversary, one of the main enemies that was certainly looking to attack and take over and eventually get to King's Landing. So what he winds up doing, though, and it's kind of neat, this whole scene that's played out, is that he winds up taking Sean Bean, Ned Stark's greatsword that he had, and it's made of Valyrian steel, which I guess is it's impossible to come by. And we find out there's only a few blacksmiths in the world that can actually rework it. And what they do is they melt down the actual blade of his sword and then forge it into two new swords. And it's very symbolic because he goes and in the fire and the kiln or what have you, he goes and he takes the dire wolf that we can assume was Robb Stark's that was killed during after the Red Wedding there. He throws that in there, and I felt like it symbolized Tywin Lannister's him preserving his family name in his mind anyway, and him in his mind defeating the Starks and taking out the key players in their family. So it was very cool, very symbolic. And then you wind up getting a nice scene between Tywin and Jaime Lannister. We see Jaime's gotten a haircut, the one-handed man over here. And he's a character that I didn't like in the first season or two, but last season really kind of, I don't know if I like him, but I think I empathize with him a little more, with some of the things that he's gone through, always being called the Kingslayer and everything else. Nonetheless, though, Tywin goes and gives him one of these swords that he forged. The other one is going to go to Joffrey, and that little shit. Luckily, we only see him for a few minutes, though. But he tells Jaime, he says, listen, you're going to go, you're one-handed now, you're handicapped, basically. You're not handy-capable, you're handicapped. And because he's talking about he's going to learn how to use his left hand better and this and that. And I like Jaime because he's just such a smug, pompous ass. It's awesome, He's just like... Tywin tells him, he says, yeah, you're going to have to learn how to use your left hand. And he says, a great swordsman can use both. And he says, well, you'll never be as good as you were with your right hand. And he says, that's all right. As long as I'm better than everybody else, that's fine. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm still top of the food chain, I don't care if my right hand is better than my left hand now that I don't have it anymore, So very, very cool stuff there. But Tywin says, listen, now that you're handicapped, you can't be the bodyguard for the king, the royal guard. You can't do that. You're going to go in my place because I'm the hand of the king now, and you're going to go to Casterly Rock, which is obviously their namesake, their homeland, their capital, I guess you'd say, of their lands. And you're going to go, live out over there in this net. And Jaime refuses. He flat out says, no, I'm not going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I've done. He feels that, he's obviously the one who killed the Mad King. But then, of course, he served for 17 years for Robert Baratheon. And now, of course, he's serving under Joffrey. And I think the main thing for him is that he thinks that he's going to get some he's going to get some sisterly love from Cersei, because if you remember, Cersei's the brother fucker of the family. So I think that's his main goal, is that he just wants to stay in King's Landing. So those were some of the key scenes at the beginning that I really enjoyed. We also wind up getting introduced to Tyrion. It winds up going out with Bram and to go in and to greet one of the Martells. There's supposed to be this prince that's going to be coming. And there's been very rocky times, I guess, between, obviously the Martells and especially the Lannisters, and we find out why later on. But it turns out that the first prince that was going to come, and his name escapes me right now, didn't make it. But I guess the second son, who's also a great warrior, this Oberyn, he came. He did come for the royal wedding between Joffrey and obviously his bride to be. So nonetheless, though, and forgive me too when I occasionally forget a name or something like that. A lot of times it's just because there's so many of them and there's so many plot lines to follow and dangle. But there's some really interesting stuff that happens with him. We find out he hates Lannisters. He winds up in one of Littlefinger's brothels. Winds up going, and there's always got to be some good sex and some good nudity in Game of Thrones. There's always titties everywhere. And as a matter of fact, too, as my wife and I went back through and started watching the seasons again on DVD, they show a lot of dingalings as well. So if you're not comfortable with that, you shouldn't be watching Game of Thrones, I guess. It's kind of like softcore medieval porn. And back then, they didn't have the internet and everything else, so they'd go to a brothel. And anyway, you see this Oberyn has a taste for his wife or his girlfriend or whatever, has a taste for women, and he has a taste for young men. And we see that very quickly, but we also see that he has a distaste for Lannisters. Tyrion comes upon him after he winds up going and stabbing, starts a fight with a couple of these Lannisters. They were talking shit to each other, and stabs him in the hand. And I just thought it was great how he did it, because the other guy that's going to go and come at him after he does this, the other Lannister, he goes and he says there's a lot of a lot of veins, a lot of things in the wrist over their nerves and what have you. He'll bleed to death. You want to attack me, go ahead, but then you'll both be dead. But if you leave right now, you have to make a choice, because if you leave right now and get help, you may be able to save his life, And I just thought it was funny how he played out. This guy's obviously a badass warrior. We find out, though, that his sister was married to Targaryens, and obviously she was butchered, she was raped, and then split in half by the Mountain, the Hound's brother, the Hound's silent, kind of bigger, uglier brother. And we find out that he has this deep hatred for the Lannisters. He tells Tyrion that he believes that Tywin's the one that gave that order, and then obviously too to kill his niece and nephew, which, as far as I know, if I follow all the lines correctly, his niece and nephew would have obviously been Viserys, who's been dead since season 1, and Daenerys. So. And then you kind of go into the whole Daenerys thing, and we don't see a whole lot with them there. She's just kind of walking with her army that gets bigger and bigger. She's loved by everyone. We do see her dragons, though, which I think was like the kind of token, let's see the dragons. And you get to see them for a couple minutes, and you see that they cannot be controlled. As they're getting bigger, one's kind of sitting by her, sort of laying across her lap, and as these other two go and drop this carcass of an animal, and they're all kind of picking at it and going to fight over it, she goes to lean forward and tell him, like, oh, it's okay, like, go to pet him type of thing, and he turns and snaps at one of these dragons, turns and snaps at her, like, get off, bitch, So I thought it was really kind of cool, because then Jorah comes over and says, they cannot be tamed, Khaleesi. As they get bigger, that's just how they are. And he has such a smooth, buttery voice, too, I tell you. I just love that guy. But, so not a whole lot going on with Daenerys. We do get to, and like I said, these are kind of the check-in moments where you get to see everybody and what they've been doing, what's been going on. We see Jaime and Cersei. Jaime is now trying to kind of hook up with Cersei again, like, hey, come on, it's been a while. I've been back for a few weeks. And she's pissed off at him because she's like, you know what? You attacked Ned Stark in the streets and then wound up having to leave and run. You got captured. You've been gone. And he's like, I got captured. And she's like, well, and he's like, I was trying to escape every day and this and that, plotting my escape. She goes, you took too long. And I was just like, oh, I love this cold bitch. You took too long. No more brother fucking for me right now, So she turns him away. And it's kind of neat, though, too, because you wind up seeing Tyrion and Shay, and he turns her away as well. I think obviously for fear of her life, because Tywin, had threatened to kill her if he finds out that, that Tyrion is with her or has been with her again. So, but as usual, there's a lot of the good spying, the backstabbing, the I saw this, I did that. You see Jon Snow. You see him very briefly kind of recovering from his wounds after Ygritte put a few arrows in him at the end of the last season. He's back, of course, with his with everybody there at Castle Black, and he goes in front of this kind of border committee, so to speak, and really just kind of punks them all out, man. He's just like, they're trying to go and denounce everything that he did bad, just so they can kind of hang him. And he's like, listen, this is the deal, okay? Mance Rayder is on his way here with 100,000 men, okay? He sent people over the wall that I came with because I was put into this position as kind of an internal spy and what have you, right? The double agent, so to speak. And I helped them get over the wall. So they're going to attack from the south. Well, he's going to attack from the north when this bonfire. That's the facts. That's what's going to happen, Jack, And I liked how he presented it to him because he's basically like, kill me or don't kill me, but, get fucking ready for war here, okay? So I thought that was neat. That was real neat. And then we also saw the wildlings, and they met up with another group, and this kind of real weird-looking, sort of bald, scarred-looking dude. I don't know if they're scars or what. He just looks like a big menacing dude, right? So we wind up checking in on them. We see them as well. And there was a couple other smaller things that we saw as well that I thought were touching between Sansa and the night that she saved from Joffrey and his reign on his name day bullshit, which I think was last season. There was a very touching moment where, he doesn't really have much left in his family name, and he gives her this necklace that was passed down from generation to generation because she saved his life and everything else, And she says, well, anyone would have done it. He said, it doesn't matter. You did it, So all very good stuff. The best part, though, that I thought and a lot of people will probably enjoy, and I don't watch Game of Thrones. When I started watching it, I watched it because I thought it was this badass fantasy, medieval times, action type of shit, swords and sorcery and dragons, right? And it's not. It's a medieval soap opera, okay? It's very akin to, if The Walking Dead is an apocalyptic soap opera, this is a medieval soap opera. This is very much about the Game of Thrones. It's about the backstabbing. It's about who's in a better position. It's about whose family is more wealth. It's about the, what type of deal can we make with this person, then later on be able to break it and stab him in the back because it's in our best interest now to side with this person. It's all about that. That's what it's about. So the action is not always something that's front and center, and I'm fine with that. However, the pair of the Hound, the Mountain's brother, and Arya Stark. If you remember last season, he was just coming into was it River Run or whatever they call that, and he was just coming into to basically to ransom her off and to say, hey, listen, I found one of the Stark girls. I'm sure to Robb and to Catelyn. Obviously, they were all killed and slaughtered. He wound up actually knocking her out and getting her out of there, right? Now his whole goal, he says he's going to take her to her aunt in the Vale, if you remember her from the first season, the one that has like the 8-year-old sucking on her titty, to try to kind of ransom her out, get some money for her, right? The cool thing is the interactions between these two are hilarious, okay? Arya, to me, is one of those. Daenerys, I really like. I really like Daenerys. You'll see a great picture I drew of her at the end of this review, too, so stay tuned for that. But Arya I really like because she's grown so much since the first season, and I just like how she has this hatred for these people that have harmed her and her family, and she recites their names at night and keeps adding names to the list, Nonetheless, though, we get a little bit of retribution for Arya, and like I said, the banter between her and the Hound is wonderful. They wind up coming upon this inn, this little town, what have you, and they see some of the slavers, the ones that actually had captured her and her friends and had them in the third season. And if you remember, her sword, Needle, was taken from her. The sword that Jon Snow made for back in the first, had made for and gave to her back in the first season. She sees them, and she remembers that one prick that took her sword actually going and stabbing her friend because he couldn't walk and said that he needed help, and he just went and just, got him right through the throat, said these words to him and everything else, And it's great because all of a sudden, because the Hound's looking down on them and everything, and all of a sudden she disappears and she's just going towards them, right? So the Hound, next thing you know, he follows her down there. And this is a character, too, that I hated at first and now I'm starting to like. They go into this inn or what have you, and these guys that are in there that are supposedly doing the king's work now, they're protected because they're under the king's banner, under Joffrey's banner. They start to start some shit with the Hound, talking about how, oh yeah, we heard the king's dog turned tail and ran and this and that, and you just know that it's going to go down, And when it does go down, there's a good build up to it, and when it goes, this is the longest scene in the whole show. It's probably 10 or 15 minutes. And it's great because when it does go down, I mean, the Hound just goes and starts taking out, like, at first barehanded, just straight up knocks this dude out. Just starts taking on like 4 or 5, maybe 6 guys, you know. As it progresses, there's a point where he actually gets knocked down. There's a couple of guys trying to kick at him. He's still trying to block one guy with his sword. Just great action. Kicks his legs out from under him. Grabs this other guy that's coming towards him that's trying to go and put a knife in him. Turns the knife and then goes and actually plants his face on it like 3 times. Just beautifully done. I mean, it's so freaking gory that some of the scenes actually turn my stomach when I watch them. Just like, my God, that's just, oh, good Jesus. Nonetheless, though, Arya winds up getting involved, and she winds up taking out the last couple of guys, which I thought was just great the way she did it, man. She busts this one dude over the head, and then picks up like a broadsword that's too big for it. It's like bigger than her. Remember, she's like a 12-year-old girl, maybe. She's got to be like 80 pounds soaking wet. She picks up the sword that probably weighs half her body weight, and just like slowly sticks it through this guy while he's on the ground after she knocked him out. Then goes and winds up taking out the guy, or taking down the guy, that head slaver, I forget what his name was, but the one that killed her friend back in, I want to say it was season 3, episode 2, if I remember correctly. It was the beginning of episode, or season 3, so episode 2 or 3. Forgive me if I'm off on an episode, or my memory's not impeccable. Nonetheless, though, she says the exact same words back to him that he said to her friend, to the boy, you know, that she just wanted, that he wound up killing because his leg was hurt, you know. And then it's after she takes her sword back, and then she just slowly goes and sticks it right through his neck, man, and just watches him bleed out. It goes, and then after that, man, the camera pulls out, man, and it fades to black, and just beautifully done. So all in all, I thought it was a great episode. It was a good starting. I do not hold an HBO show, especially because it's only 10 episodes in a season, I don't hold them to the same standards as a network television show, or even a show like AMC, like with The Walking Dead. Because when they have 16 or 22 or 24 episodes, they give you a solid, strong season premiere. They put a lot of money behind it. They try to get you involved, introduce new characters, have a lot of action, what have you. Then there's that mid-season finale that usually leaves you off around Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, for a couple months until they come back and premiere the second half of it. And then the season finale. So those 3 episodes, the season premiere, the mid-season finale, and the season finale, I usually, with network television things, I kind of hold them to a higher standard. However, Game of Thrones, though, there's no commercials, so it's a 58, 59, 60-minute, whatever episode, right? So you're not getting 42 minutes. So automatically you're getting 1 1/3 episode every week. And there's only 10 episodes, and they run, you know, back to back to back. They go out. So I think they might take a break right towards the end around Memorial Day. That's what they did last year. But nonetheless, though, for a premiere, it was good because there's so many different stories to follow that we needed to get that wrap up, and we needed to get that check-in, so to speak, on several different people. And we still didn't see someone. We didn't see Stannis. We didn't see him and what's going on with him. We didn't see Littlefinger at all. We didn't see Varys. There's a lot of different characters that we didn't even see, and that's okay. We'll probably see them next week. But I'm hyped. I'm excited. I really like it. And I honestly got to say that I give it 2 thumbs up. I think it was a solid premiere. I think it flowed very well. It wasn't very slow at all. And I felt very rewarded and good, like I had seen a lot of my favorite characters at the end of it. So my episode question for you, though, brothers and sisters, is ultimately, what do you think about Arya and her kind of growth as a character? And I'm talking about, you know, obviously she's becoming very dark now, in the sense that she's seen pretty much her whole family and friends and everyone she's loved be taken from her. But nonetheless, though, I feel for a young child that's very impressionable, having kids of my own, this is why I look at things like this. You know, what do you think about her turn to the dark? Is it going to be something where she's going to become this just raging beast, this monster that's going to be uncontrollable? Because honestly, I like her. I'm pulling for her. Or do you think she's going to be able to go to the darkness like that when she needs to, for revenge or to avenge or whatever, and then still be able to come back to humanity? And I think that's one of the hardest things when you start to, especially when you're younger, you can't separate the two, you know? So anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on Arya, herself and her growth as a character, as well as her interactions with the Hound, because I thought they were priceless and some of the best moments in the show. Leave your answer to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation.
Remember to follow me on Twitter and Facebook and even my other channel.